Number 21, a half pipe ramp at a skate park is approximately parabolic in shape. Parabolic, that means a parabola, which is either going to be a U shape or an upside down U shape. Since it's a ramp, it's probably going to be a U shape. So it's modeled by this equation. At what point would a skater be at the lowest part of the ramp? So with this equation, since there could be a 1 in front of there, since this is positive, that does tell me for sure it opens up. It's going to be a U shape. The lowest part of the ramp would be at the vertex. The vertex is the lowest point on a U-shaped graph. And so that vertex is going to be at negative b over 2a. And this is based off of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So we just need to look for what our a and b values are. So b is equal to negative 6. A is equal to 1. So negative b would be negative of negative 6. And then over 2 times a, 2 times 1. So opposite of negative 6 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our vertex is going to be at 3 something. And what we would do at that point is we would just substitute a 3 in place of all of our x's. So 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 9. So that would be 9. You could actually just type all this in your calculator if you wanted to. Okay, anyway. Just with time constraints, it's probably simplest just to type that in, but that does work out to 0, which if you looked at the choices, once we found out it was 3 something, C was the only option that even had 3 as an x value, so that would have to be our answer at that point. 22, we have a watermelon launched from the ground with an initial velocity of 64 feet per second, and the question is, how long does it take for the watermelon to hit the ground? This left side of the equation is h of t, which just means height is a function of time. V sub 0, V is for velocity. The 0 means like at time 0. So that's our initial velocity, and then t is time. So a couple things to think about. One is how long does it take till it hits the ground? When it hits the ground, the height would be 0. We don't really, if you want to kind of ignore that part, h is our height. We don't really need the t in parentheses. That's just telling us it's a function, which you'll learn about later. So if the height is 0, the initial velocity is 64. So we're basically trying to figure out what value of t is going to make this work. So this is where you could just split these up, make sure everybody's on the same page, you know, putting a 0 in for h, putting 64 in for v sub 0, and then you're just substituting to see what works. So if you try 2 and you work that out, this would be 128 minus 64, or you just do it in your calculator, it's going to be 64, so that didn't work. If you try 4, put a 4 in place of t, both places, that will give you 0. And so that is our answer, 4 seconds until the watermelon hits the ground. That would also be at, if you wanted to think of this as a parabola, it's kind of an upside down U-shaped parabola. But really, we're not finding the vertex here. We're actually finding when it hits the ground, the x-intercept. So that'd probably be the best way to do it, is what we did. 23, they're asking for the coordinates of this vertex. So we're going to look for negative b over 2a. So b is negative 12, a is 2. So negative of negative 12 over 2 times 2. That would be 12 over 4, which is 3. So it's 3 something. So it's either a or b. And then if you put in a 3, in place of the x. And you could just type this in your calculator again. Okay, we've got more negatives than positives. It's going to come out as -2. So answer choice A for that one. 24, parabola opens downward and is wider than the graph of the parent function y equals x squared. So what is true about A in this equation? So if it opens down, then we know that it's going to have to be negative. So it's not going to be between 0 and 1. It's not going to be greater than 1. It's going to be negative. And then the question is just, is it less than -1, or is it between -1 and 0? And it's actually going to be between -1 and 0, because what happens is if you have a fraction, negative makes it open down, but then if you have a fraction in front of whatever your squared term is, that fraction is going to make it where your y values, in this case, don't go down as quickly. If you had a negative that made it go down and then you had a number bigger than 1, let's say you had a 5 there, that's going to be going down really quickly. Okay, so with this being a smaller number, a smaller negative number, it's not going to go down as quickly, which is going to make your graph wider. Number 25, which quadrant is the vertex of the parabola with this equation? So what we want to do is think about how this graph got shifted. And here's kind of the idea of this setup. Similar idea to our circle, only a little bit different. This is our vertex is at h and k. Okay, so it's minus h, but then it's plus k. So the x part kind of goes opposite of what you think. The y part goes like you would think it would. So -4, this is going from 0, 0. From 0, 0, this +4 actually does opposite of what you think. So it's actually going to shift it to the left 4 units. So that means this would be -4. And that's kind of the idea here. This is the opposite of our x value, which is in the parentheses. So if this is a 4, then our x value of our vertex is -4, and then +2, so 2 is our y value. So -4, 2 is what we're looking at. -4, 2 would be up here, and so that would be in quadrant 2. Remember, the quadrants are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 26, determine the maximum or minimum value of this function. So first, notice this is a positive number in front. So if that's a positive number, means this is opening upward, which means we're going to have a minimum. So we have a minimum. So it's either A or C. What we need to do is find our vertex, actually, then. So negative b over 2a, b is -8. So negative of -8 over 2 times 2. So that's 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we have 2 something. And if we work this out, this will work out to 1. So the vertex is at 2, 1. And like I said, the y value is really what we want, the y value of our vertex. So that would be a minimum of 1. 27, they want us to write a rule to describe this transformation. Basically, all of these are like x and y values. So imagine this is the point -4, -3, and this is the point -1, 1. So just think about how did we get from here to here. So -4 to -1, we'd be adding 3 to our x. -1 to 4, we'd be adding 4 to our y. So adding 3 to the x would be 3 units to the right. Adding 4 to the y would be 4 units up. That would be answer choice B. 29, they want us to find the first row of 2p plus 2q. So the first row, we're just looking at the top rows on these things. 2p means we're going to multiply these by 2. So basically our top row here would be 8, 2. The top row over here, if we double those, would be 0, 1. And then if we're adding those together, 8 plus 0 is 8. And 2 plus 1 is 3. So 8, 3 would be it. And that would be choice D. Number 30, they want us to find the first row of p times t. So for that, what we're going to do is we are going to take this times these. We're kind of turning the 4, 1. It's kind of like you turn it 90 degrees. And so you do the 4 times the 6. And then you do 1 times 3. And then for the next one in the first row, we would do 4 times -4 plus 1 times -1. That's this. And then the last part, we would do 4 times 9 plus 1 times -5. Okay, so this we've got 24 plus 3, which is 27. This is -6 plus 16 plus -1, which is -17. And then this is 36 plus -5 is 31. Really, once we knew that we had 3 numbers and the first number was 27, it was all over right there. C would be the only option. And, you know, we can get it down to either C or D just by the fact of that we're going to have 3 numbers, not 2 numbers. Number 31, they want us to simplify this. Basically then everything in the second matrix is getting multiplied by -5. So -5 times 2, top left is -10. -5 times -2 is +10. -5 times -3 is 15. -5 times 4 is -20. And then we're just adding the elements that are in the same spot. So 4 plus -10 would be -6. -5 plus 10 would be 5. -4 plus -3 would be I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. -4 plus 15 would be 11. And really, that's going to be it at that point. -5 plus -20 is -25. (32), they want us to simplify this. First thing would be to multiply everything in the second matrix by -4. So I'll just write that up above here, I guess. So -4 times -1 would be 4. -4 times 2 is -8. -16, -4, 20, and -12. Okay, and then what we're doing is we're multiplying this matrix by this matrix. So it's taking and turning. So 3 times 4, the top left corners, 3 times 4 would be 12. 1 times negative 8 would be negative 8. And 5 times negative 16 would be negative 80. You could just type this on your calculator. 3 times 4 plus 1 times negative 8 plus 5 times negative 16. That'd probably be an easier way of doing that. So that's going to work out to negative 76, as you might expect, because 3 answers have that. And then we're looking at now multiplying the top row by this right column. So 3 times negative 4 plus 1 times 20 plus 5 times negative 12. If you work that out, is going to be negative 52. And we still have more work to do because we would still have to do the second row to both of those columns, but there's only one answer choice that has those two numbers in it. So we're really done at this point. It's going to be answer choice C. 33, to simplify this, notice the second part is in parentheses. So just like order of operations, we're going to do that part first. So starting with each row, so we're going to multiply these negative 6s by these. So negative 6 times negative 1 plus negative 6 times 0. So that's going to be 6. And then for the middle row, 6 times negative 1 plus negative 5 times 0 would end up being negative 6. And then 2 times negative 1 plus 6 times 0 would be negative 2. So we're done with that part now. So now we're multiplying these by that first matrix. So we're going to multiply this row by these numbers. So 4 times 6 plus negative 1 times negative 6 plus 5 times negative 2. And if you work that all out, you'll get 20. And technically there's only one number with a 20 on top. If you do this other part, multiply all these to those numbers. Negative 1 times 6 plus 4 times negative 6 plus negative 1 times negative 2. And that'll be negative 28. So that's going to be answer choice C. Sorry, that's going to be answer choice A. How about 34? They want us to simplify this. So same idea we've been doing. And these would be really good problems for just splitting up. You multiply the first row, you multiply the second row, and figure it out from there. So 5 times negative 2 plus negative 3 times 2 plus 3 times 0 is going to be negative 16. Oh, and there we are, negative 16. This is the only one that has a negative 16 here. Okay, we can go through the rest, but, time crunch, we got to figure it out quickly, I guess, then we'll just go with that. And that would be a good way of double checking, though, if somebody else did the second part and verify that you get negative 56 with that. Or sorry, that would be actually, we'd be doing this to here would be negative 56. 35, they want us to evaluate this determinant. Notice these have just the lines next to them instead of kind of the brace type things. It doesn't have like this where they've been having. So what we do for this, we're going to multiply 3 times 0 minus the other diagonal. 4 times negative 3. So 3 times 0 is 0, minus negative 12. So that's going to be 12, answer choice B. Number 36, we have a 3 by 3 matrix. So we're going to start with, it's kind of like just a quick refresher. If this is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, then we're going to do A times these others that aren't there, minus B times the others that aren't there, plus C times the others that aren't there. By aren't there, what I mean is they're not in the same row and column. And there's actually a shortcut to this that's maybe just a better, easier way for us to do this. We'll go ahead and mention here. We actually did this when we did area of triangles. So the way of doing this is you can just rewrite the first two columns. So 1, 0, 2, and 3, negative 1, 4. If you write those to the next to what you had to start with, and then you're going to look for diagonals. So diagonals, first going this direction. So 1 times negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. And you could do these on your calculator if you had any hesitance on this. But then 3 times 1 times 2 would be 6. And then 2 times 0 times 4 would be 0. So that would be 5. And then if you go the other direction, look for diagonals that have 3 numbers. This would be, multiply those together would be negative 4. Multiply these together would be 4. Multiply these together would be 0. So that's going to be 0. And then if you subtract those, take the first ones you got minus the second ones. Okay, left diagonals minus the right. Okay, that's how that works. Left minus right. That'd be 5 minus 0, which is 5, which is choice C. Just especially with the amount of time we have involved with working these out, and then there's less chances of making sign errors and things. Again, we could look at why this actually works, but for now, just know that it does work. So for 37, they want us to find the area of the triangle formed by these points. What we do is we're going to take half of, plus or minus half of, and we're just going to write these negative 5, 3. We'll put a 1 next to it. 6, negative 2, put a 1 next to it. Negative 3, 4, put a 1 next to it. Okay, so it's plus or minus half times that, because area of a triangle is half base times height, I think has to do with that. So if you write these first two columns again like we did a minute ago, and then let's look at the diagonals. So if you multiply these together, that would be 10. Multiply these together would be negative 9. And multiply these together would be 24. So 10 minus 9 is 1, plus 24 is 25. And then if we look at our diagonals going the other direction, multiply these would be negative 6. Multiply these would be negative 20. And multiply these would be 18. So negative 26 plus 18 would be negative 8. And we're going to subtract. So 25 minus negative 8 would be 33. Okay, I just noticed a mistake I made here on that first red diagonal that I did. That should have been a 6 instead of a -6. So this would be -14 plus 18 would be 4. So we've got 25 minus 4, which is 21. And then we need to take half of that. The plus or minus just as if this would have come out negative, then we just make sure our answer is positive because area has to be positive. So half of 21 would be 10.5 or 10.5 would be choice C. So 38, kind of the same idea. So -8, 10, put a 1 next to it. 6, 17, 1, 2, -4, 1. And then we'll rewrite the first two columns again. -8, 6, 2, 10, 17, -4. And then we'll do our diagonals. -136 plus 20 minus 24. So -160 plus 20 would be -140. And then if we come back the other direction, this would be 34. That would end up being plus 32 and plus 60. So that would be 66 plus 60 is 126. So we got -140 minus 126 would be -266. We're going to take half of that, which is -133, and then it's plus or minus, so we just have to know that our answer has to be positive. So it would be 133, which is choice A. And that would be a thing, again, where you could split up, have somebody do left diagonals, have somebody do right diagonals, and then subtract those and figure it out from there. 39, they want us to find the inverse of this matrix. So the inverse is 1 over the determinant of A. And then if this was originally A, B, C, D, then basically A and D switch places, and then B and C stay where they're at, but they become opposite signs of what they were before. So for this problem, first of all, we can find the determinant. So we do 2 times 5, just the diagonal there, which is 10, and then minus -8 times -6, which would be minus 48, which would be -38. So we have 1 over -38. So 1 over -38. You can write that also as -1 over 38. Or like they're doing here, you could just put the negative next to the fraction. I don't like that because it can blur in with your fraction sign. And then it's just switching these numbers around. So the 2 and 5 switch places. So 5 is in the top left, 2 is in the bottom right, and then the other two get opposite signs. So -6 becomes 6, -8 becomes 8, and so that would be answer choice B. Number 40, they want us to find the inverse of matrix R. So here is matrix R. We don't really need the other ones for what we're doing. So 0 times negative 2 minus 1 times 1/2. We're going to find the determinant. So this is 1 minus a half, which would be negative 1/2. Oh, okay. We are going to need those others because that's going to be our answer. So this would be 1 over negative 1/2. What you could do there, you could multiply both of these by 2 just to get an equivalent fraction that doesn't have a fraction in a fraction. 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2. So we're going to have negative 2 times something. So 0 and negative 2 switch places. And then the others, we do opposite signs. So half becomes negative a half. 1 becomes negative 1. And then what we need to do is multiply the negative 2 in to our matrix. So negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. At that point, it's got to be matrix P because that's the only one that's there. That's like that. We could finish off. Negative 2 times negative a half is 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 is 2. And negative 2 times 0 is 0. 41, Kramer's rule is used to solve the system of equations. Which determinant represents the numerator for n? So basically, we've got 3, negative 5, 12. We've got 4, 7, negative 5. So the numerator for n is going to be just the other columns. So if this is m, this is n, and this is what it equals, the numerator for n ends up being the other stuff, basically. So that would be answer choice C. And we've talked about actually just solving the equations, working it out algebraically, but we can look into the Kramer's rule a little bit more as well. 42, which matrix would not be used to write a matrix of equations for these system of equations? And that actually would be answer choice C. It's got to be between A and C, really. The deal is that it's the order of the variables. F comes before G, and so we don't want G coming before F. So which one would not be used? Answer choice C. The rest of the questions here just involve the different mathematicians, facts about them, so that will be up to you for looking over those. So hope this helps, and have a good day.